Thanks for joining us on this Monday. I'm Joe Fryer. Savannah is on assignment covering the Winter Olympics. We begin with a Minnesota preschooler who is finally back home this morning after he was detained alongside his father by immigration agents in Minneapolis. A federal judge ordered the release of 5-year-old Liam Conejo Ramos and his dad on Saturday while their immigration case proceeds through the court system. They were being held at an ICE detention facility in Texas. Last month, images showing the boy in a blue bunny hat and Spider-Man backpack sparked international outrage. He was photographed when he was taken into custody on his way home from school. The Department of Homeland Security says it was conducting a targeted operation to arrest Liam's father when the boy was detained. The spokesperson said Liam was abandoned, that the child's mother refused to claim custody of him even after officers assured her that she would not be arrested. That's something Liam's mother denies. She said federal agents tried to use her son as bait to get her to come out of the home. DHS says the father requested that Liam stay with him. For more on all this, let's bring in NBC's Alice Barr. Alice, good morning. So that federal judge issued a scathing court order demanding Liam and his father's release. He described the circumstances under their detention as bereft of human decency. What else are we learning?
Good morning, Joe. That federal judge who ordered the release of Liam and his father did not hold back, slamming the Trump administration's immigration crackdown as a, quote, ill-conceived and incompetently implemented government pursuit of daily deportation quotas, apparently even if it requires traumatizing children. Over the weekend, Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro traveled with Liam and his dad from the Dilley Detention Center in Texas, where they were being held for nearly 2 weeks, back to Minneapolis. And Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar then shared this photo, writing, "Welcome home, Liam." Attorneys representing the family say they entered the U.S. within the past couple of years seeking asylum from Ecuador, that they had booked an appointment using the CBP One app set up under the Biden administration to create a more orderly way to process asylum claims, and that they were, quote, following all the established protocols, pursuing their claim for asylum, showing up for their court hearings, and pose no safety or flight risk, adding that they should never have been detained.
So, Alice, I mean, what happened to Liam is putting a spotlight on children in ICE custody. He and his father were held in the facility you just mentioned, south of San Antonio. What else are we learning about that facility?
So this is far from the only case of a child being held at that detention center, and Congressman Castro is promising to keep working to bring all the children home, as there's been an increase in families that have been taken into custody. The Department of Homeland Security has also now confirmed 2 detainees at the center came down with measles 2 days ago, and that ICE Health Services moved to immediately quarantine and control the spread. They said they've ceased all movement within the facility and that they're quarantining anyone suspected of making contact with those who were infected, saying that medical staff is taking care of the detainees and making sure they have what they need.
Alice, over the weekend, a different federal judge, this one appointed by former President Joe Biden, rejected Minnesota's bid to just try and end President Trump's immigration operation in the state. What was the reasoning here?
So essentially, this Biden-appointed judge found that the state's legal case was too weak to grant an injunction, saying that there was evidence that ICE and CBP agents had engaged in racial profiling, in excessive use of force, and other harmful actions, but that while it had disrupted daily life for Minnesotans, that there was not enough evidence to state that the state of Minnesota was being punished or unfairly targeted by the federal government, that wasn't enough to justify blocking the surge altogether.
All right. Alice Barr reporting from Washington. Alice, thank you so much. We have an update to another story we brought you last week out of Minnesota. The Department of Homeland Security is pushing back on claims made by 2 women who say that while they were detained by ICE, they helped a federal agent who was having a medical emergency. It happened on January 22nd in the city of Brooklyn Park, just outside of Minneapolis. Dashcam video shows the moment federal authorities descended on a car, taking Tippy Amundsen and Heather Zeman into custody. The video does not capture what led up to their arrest. A DHS spokesperson says the women had been obstructing operations by Border Patrol and that they, quote, disobeyed law enforcement commands and ignored warnings, resulting in their arrest. The women maintain they were not breaking the law. Now, what happened next is what's getting so much attention. Amundsen and Zeman joined us last week here on Morning News Now. They told us they were handcuffed in the back of an SUV en route to a federal detention center with 3 federal agents in the vehicle. Then one agent started to have what they believed to be a seizure.
I saw him start to lean back, and then he said out loud, well, not really loud, very softly, that he was not feeling very well. And then his arms started to shake.
So I quickly asked them to pull over, uncuff me, and let me help him, because we could hear his tongue and the fluids in his mouth begin to sound like they were going to be aspirated into his body, and I was worried that he was going to stop breathing. I knew from minimal training that I have on being on the emergency response team when I was a kindergarten teacher, that I needed to get him into the recovery position, keep him warm and keep him calm. So they did that. They pulled over, they uncuffed me, let me run around the vehicle. They began to uncuff Heather, and then I got to his side and I told him that he was going to be okay. I had to move his service weapon from his hip to the front of his body to be able to get him into the recovery position. And then I just held his head up so that he could have a clear airway. I spoke to him and I asked him his name. I told him that he was going to be safe and that I was going to stay there until EMS arrived.
Late last week, 3 days after NBC News reached out, the Department of Homeland Security responded with a statement offering a different account of what happened. A DHS spokesperson said, quote, while driving back for processing, one of the agents in the vehicle began to feel unwell and experienced a medical emergency. These 2 women lied to law enforcement, stating they were nurses when they were not, and they remained secured in the vehicle. Agents immediately pulled over to render assistance and called 911 for medical support. The fire department and EMS arrived on scene within minutes, and the agent was treated. In response to that statement, Amundsen and Zeman say they never stated they were nurses. As for the claim they remained secured in the vehicle, they point to this video of the medical emergency. It was taken from a camera outside of a police precinct building. They obtained the video through an open records request, and it was verified by NBC News. It's tough to see clearly who's who in the video, but an attorney for the women says it shows Amundsen standing outside of the SUV on the passenger side, then shows her uncuffed, hands-free, being escorted to another vehicle. I spoke with that attorney, Ed Shaw, who calls the DHS statement disgusting. He says the women went out of their way to help the agent, maybe even saved his life, and says they're still getting trashed by their own government. The women say they were handcuffed again, then taken to a federal detention center and given citations. Their attorney says they're still waiting to see if they'll face charges for obstructing federal officers. We did ask DHS for an update on the agent's condition. The agency did not provide one. Funding for ICE is at the heart of a partial government shutdown, which continues this morning. Congress is working through the passage of a long-term funding plan. The holdup does come after the Senate changed the package because of these concerns over President Trump's mass deportation operation and the deaths of 2 American citizens during those ICE operations in Minneapolis. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin joins us now. Julie, does it seem likely this partial shutdown will last long? Just what are we expecting today?
Joe, it'll last most likely until tomorrow. That is because Speaker Johnson's initial plan of having Democrats help provide the votes to pass this package, moving it along in a process known as on suspension, meaning Democrats and Republicans would need to put up 2/3 of the votes for this to pass. The thing is, though, Johnson experienced a wrinkle when Leader Jeffries, the top Democrat in the House, said Democrats will not provide the votes. So Johnson had to go to Plan B, meaning this process will get slowed down. And they're going to have an initial meeting today at 4 o'clock to see if they can move forward. Speaker Johnson told Kristen Welker that he expects this package to pass out of the House by tomorrow. Take a listen.
I'm confident that we'll do it at least by Tuesday. We have a logistical challenge of getting everyone in town, and because of the conversation I had with Hakeem Jeffries, I know that we've got to pass a rule and probably do this mostly on our own. Our intention is by Tuesday to fund all agencies of the federal government except for that one, and then we'll have 2 weeks of good faith negotiations to figure it out.
Really quickly, Joe, how did we get here? Remember, on Friday, the Senate was able to pass this package. They passed a continuing resolution for 2 weeks to fund the Department of Homeland Security on status quo spending levels because Democrats raised concerns about the situation in Minneapolis. And it wasn't just Democrats. Republicans joined them, and that is why they were able to pass the package they did on Friday. And that is why we're in a partial shutdown right now.
Yeah, so Julie, I mean, just at this moment where we're at, I know it's fluid. What are we hearing from Democrats? What is it they are specifically calling for?
Well, Democrats in the House are frustrated. And I'll tell you, we picked up on Friday that it seems like Leader Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, did not have close coordination with Hakeem Jeffries in the House. He even told me that he worked with Jeffries just on the timing of the funding period for DHS, those 2 weeks, so that Democrats can negotiate reforms. What they're looking for, all Border Patrol agents to be unmasked, to wear body cam footage, to have more coordination with state and local law enforcement to avert the situation, the tragic shootings that we saw happen in Minneapolis. But that's not enough for House Democrats because they are still supposed to fund for the next 2 weeks by that continuing resolution status quo funding for the DHS. Take a listen to what Ro Khanna, one Democrat, said was his reasoning for why he's voting against the package.
I'm a firm no, and I'm going to advocate with colleagues that they vote no. I just don't see how in good conscience Democrats can vote for continuing ICE funding when they're killing American citizens, when there's no provision to repeal the tripling of the budget. I hope my colleagues will say no.
Now, despite that, some Democrats are expected to vote for this bill. So I think Speaker Johnson's prediction of at least by tomorrow is probably right. Americans can look forward to the lights turning back on.
All right, Julie, we know you're going to stay on that throughout the day. While we have you, another topic. The president announced plans to actually shut down the Kennedy Center in Washington for renovation for quite a while. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, starting on July 4th, America's 250th birthday, the president posting in a Truth Social overnight saying that after determining renovations and how long it would take, how extensive they need to be, something that we weren't really sure he was considering over the past year, Joe, he consulted a team of experts, musicians, he said, as well as construction experts who told him that the best course of action is to shut down the Kennedy Center that the president has renamed, although not officially, the Trump Kennedy Center, to complete these extensive renovations over the next 2 years. It comes, of course, after the president fired the board of the Kennedy Center, replacing it with members that are favorable to him. Again, changing the name, at least in message, not officially. And of course, we saw the screening of the Melania movie, the First Lady's movie premiere ahead of this weekend with the president's cabinet in attendance, a lot of his allies as well. So this just marks another point of escalation as the president has tried to change different buildings, including the White House, and now, of course, targeting the Kennedy Center. Joe.
All right. Julie Sirkin, a lot to cover. Thank you so much. A massive election upset in Texas is setting off alarm bells for Republicans across the country. We're talking about a state legislative special election. Democrat Taylor Ramett easily defeated Republican Lee Wambsgans 57 to 43%. This was a contest to fill a vacant state Senate seat in a district near Fort Worth. So why is this significant? Well, historically, it is a deeply conservative district, one that President Trump won by more than 17 points in the 2024 presidential election. Ramett is a 33-year-old labor union leader and a veteran. He will now serve out the remainder of the term until early next year. Both he and Wambsgans are registered to run in the November election. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good morning. This is a big swing, a 31-point difference between Mr. Trump's performance in 2024 and this race just over a year later. Wambsgans received an endorsement from President Trump and also some other prominent Texas Republicans. So what are the main reasons voters embraced a Democrat in that district?
Good morning, Joe. I think the biggest thing here is that simply Republicans are not showing up to the polls, that they are not energized. And on the flip side, what you've seen is Democrats are super energized. This is very reminiscent of 2018, the first midterm for President Trump in his first term, where you saw tremendous Democratic enthusiasm, tremendous Democratic activism. Democrats are not having to do anything to get their voters out. A special election tends to have lower turnout anyway, but the Democrats are showing up. This is a district, as you mentioned, 17 points for Donald Trump, and at the same time, flips here by a similar margin to the Democrat. It's certainly a wake-up call, but let's listen to what Taylor Ramett had to say about why he won.
I think the factor is that this isn't red versus blue. This is right versus wrong. This is about public school funding. This is about helping working folks. This is about lowering costs. This is about everyday working folks.
And this is what the Democrats have been talking about across the country. When he talks about everyday working folks, really wants to talk about affordability, which is a consistent theme since last November's election through this special election in Texas.
And John, even before the election, the contest was seen by some as perhaps a bellwether for this year's midterms. We should keep in mind special elections are different from general elections, from midterms. Still, with this result, how much of a warning is it for Republican lawmakers?
It's a huge warning. I don't know that this district would have necessarily been a bellwether, except for that it's the only election that was happening on this day. It is a runoff election carried over from a previous election where there were 3 candidates, 2 Republicans, and nobody got 50% of the vote. But what you saw here was basically the Republican Party not coming together and not showing up. And because it flipped in this direction and looked like it was going to flip in this direction, it is seen as a bellwether. You heard Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick say that this is a wake-up call. You heard Lee Wamsgans, the losing candidate, say this is a wake-up call. I don't think there's anybody in the Republican Party who doesn't see it that way.
Ramette ran on the idea of holding the Trump administration accountable. We just heard from him there. I mean, after the win, he told reporters this win goes to everyday working people. How do you think lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are going to interpret that? How are they going to look at this contest ahead of their elections in November? Just what are the big political takeaways?
I mean, look, what we've seen from Republicans in Congress is that they are occasionally willing to very slightly stand away from Donald Trump and then get hammered by him anyway. So I think that Republicans are unlikely to, at least in Congress, really change their behavior. Certainly not until after their own primaries in this year. But through that period between the primaries and the general election, you may see them distance themselves a little bit more from Trump on occasion. Democrats, I think, are going to continue with a message that's winning for them right now.
All right. John Allen, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. New information is coming to light following the release of millions of new documents from the Epstein files. The Department of Justice released the latest batch, the biggest by far, on Friday. The documents included a draft federal indictment against Epstein and 3 co-conspirators. NBC's Melanie Zanona has the details.
The DOJ's latest batch of Epstein files revealing new connections between the late convicted sex offender and other powerful men. One of the documents appears to be a 32-count draft indictment prepared against Epstein before the non-prosecution agreement he reached in 2007. It reveals the government was looking to charge 3 co-conspirators alongside Epstein with a conspiracy to procure women under the age of 18 between 2001 and 2005. Their names are redacted, but they are described as assistants who helped schedule appointments, make calls, pay victims, and more. Some new images also appear to show Britain's former Prince Andrew kneeling over an unidentified female. There are no details provided about the circumstances or timing of the photos, and there's no indication of wrongdoing in these images. He has denied prior accusations of sexual abuse by one of Epstein's victims and has never been criminally charged. The DOJ also posted, then temporarily removed without explanation, a spreadsheet of complaints made to the FBI, including unverified allegations about both President Trump and former President Bill Clinton. Per the document, the FBI determined some of those claims were found to be not credible. Trump and Clinton have denied any wrongdoing, and they have not been accused by authorities. The DOJ says the files contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that are unfounded and false.
We did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody.
A group of Epstein survivors criticized the DOJ for heavily redacting some of the files, saying in a statement, "This is not over. We will not stop until the truth is fully revealed and every perpetrator is finally held accountable."
Our thanks to Melanie Zanona for that report. Some of the Epstein documents have been heavily redacted. The Justice Department said the White House had, quote, no oversight of the review of these new files. At least 2 congressmen have already requested to see unredacted documents. Well, it might be a new month, but the top headline in the weather remains the same. It's cold. It was another weekend of heavy snow and dangerously frigid conditions. The Carolinas still working to dig their way out from a historic storm that dumped up to 20 inches of snow. Right now, tens of millions of people are under winter weather alerts. The good news, that number is actually down from this last Friday, but still, you need to bundle up because temperatures are expected to take another tumble. Meteorologist Andrea Romero joins us now with her own projection for what to expect on this Groundhog Day. We know the folks in weather and climate don't like the groundhog that much. But Andrea, what can you tell us?
He wants to take our job, Joe.
Yes.
Well, actually, what we are experiencing is that cold weather that continues to grip the eastern coast, mostly of the United States, as we can see stretching all the way from the northeast into parts of the southeast. 64 million people are impacted, but like Joe said, we are talking about that number being significantly less. Last Friday, we were at 200 million people. So we are trending in the right direction. We're looking at the extreme cold right now with temperatures that are in the single digits. In Cincinnati, we have 6 degrees right now with a wind chill of 6, but we're looking at Elkins, a wind chill of -1 degrees. And here in New York City, 17 degrees, but it feels like 9 degrees. So that cold is stretching along the northern tier of the country into the mid-Atlantic and especially into the southeast. That's where the cold is really more dramatic. We're talking about extreme cold. We have those extreme cold warnings up along the eastern coast, and we're expecting many record low temperatures today. Right now, we're looking at wind chills that are near 30 in Tampa, 19 in Daytona Beach and Melbourne, 16 in Fort Myers, 26 degrees. So it's really cold down there. You have to bundle up and try to limit the time that you're exposed to those extremely cold temperatures. Now, the good news is that it won't be as harsh as it was last week. We're looking at temperatures that will probably break the freezing point in many areas. Temperatures that are still going to be below average, 10 to 20 degrees below average. But tomorrow, they're going to be 5 to 10 degrees below average. So it will warm up slightly. But of course, we're still dealing with frigid temperatures. So you still want to bundle up. Now, as far as any precipitation, we do have some February systems that we're monitoring. First, we have a cold front that's crossing the Central Plains today, bringing a chance of some snow in the Great Lakes and the Appalachians. Then we have another system that'll be a little bit more potent. We can have some snow possibly to the north, cold rain in the south. That's going to be for tomorrow into Wednesday. Then that system is going to be pushing offshore. So we do have a chance of 1 to 3 inches along the Ohio Valley, parts of West Virginia, and a little bit of rainfall, maybe up to ½ an inch in parts of the Gulf Coast states. But it's not a lot of precipitation. It's going to be mostly the cold that we're going to be talking about, with the exception of the west. The west is warmer than average, and we are expecting sunny and dry conditions in that part of the country.
All right. Andrea, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We have some news from inside the NBC News family to bring you. The mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie has been reported missing in Arizona. The Pima County Sheriff's Department said on Sunday that Nancy Guthrie was last seen in her home on Saturday night, shortly before 10 p.m. She was reported missing by her family around noon on Sunday. Search and rescue teams are out looking for Nancy, who is 84 years old. The sheriff said there were aspects of the scene at her home that caused, quote, grave concern. Authorities say they do not know if foul play is a factor in her disappearance, but they are not ruling it out at this time. A statement from the Guthrie family says, quote, we can confirm this is a missing persons case, and the family is working closely with local law enforcement. They're urging people to contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department if they have any information, adding they are grateful for the outreach, thoughts, and prayers. No doubt all of us here at NBC News are thinking of our colleague Savannah and her entire family and keeping them in our prayers.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.